Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 22 of Lockdown Dads. My name's Ian Dinwiddie. I'm the founder of Inspiring Dads, a coaching business that helps stressed dads to balance work and fatherhood. I have two children, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old.
And I'm James Miller, author of Dads Don't Babysit and editor of workingdads.co.uk, and also a father of two different children. And I'm delighted to say we're joined this week by, and I've written an intro because it's so impressive, this, Dr. Laura Radcliffe, who is an occupational psychologist and senior lecturer and researcher in organisational behaviour at the University of Liverpool Management School, right?
Thanks. Yeah.
Must be like the longest business card around. I mean, I'll be honest, that all makes it sound like you're really clever, but it doesn't sound all that interesting. But I think we both know that it is. It's like really. I mean, we're going to have a problem keeping this one to half an hour because there is so much interesting stuff that you do and so much that chimes with our work that we will. We're going to struggle to keep this one to time because there's lots we want to talk about. But let's start with the question we ask every week, which used to be a nice, easy question, but now is a bit more loaded. How are you?
Well, it's been a strange year, hasn't it, for everybody? And, I have two young kids as well. So my little boy is 5 and my daughter's 12. So, yeah, I mean, I never thought that I'd be trying to virtually teach hundreds of students while having my little boy sat next to me because he's, gone home for a couple of weeks because of someone's had COVID or something. So it's really interesting times for, living out a lot of the things I research and yeah. How about you guys?
I think that's something we come across a lot, is that you sort of have to say, look, if we could have our time again, we'd rather 2020 had not played out the way it has. But it has. And as you say, there's so much opportunity to learn about work and gender and all that sort of stuff that's come into play this year in such a big way. But we'll talk about that shortly. Ian, how are you?
Not too bad. Looking forward to half term. Looking forward to just doing something different, doing stuff for the kids during the week. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing with the kids. Centre Parks, for those who listened in last week, Centre Parks is still on, despite your scepticism. We've got another. By the time this goes out, it'll be 7 days before we're due to go. So fingers crossed. But we've also got a week of other bits and pieces. I've been running my 5-day challenge this week, the How to Control Your Work-Life Balance challenge. The biggest challenge isn't necessarily delivering it, because I've got that worked out quite well. Biggest challenge actually in hindsight is finding men who are proactively wanting to do things differently and being ready to take a step. Because once they're in there and once they're engaging enormous amounts of value, I've run the challenge a few times. I've changed it a little bit this year. So it's COVID compliant this year. So I've changed out one of the tasks, recorded a new video. But the biggest challenge of the challenge is actually finding men who aren't just consuming things or aren't just sort of absorbing what's going on, but are actually getting their heads in the space to do things slightly differently and to spend a bit of me time. So
Can I sign my husband up, Ian?
Yeah, well, for next one, I can send you the exercises for sure. But we're kind of
yeah, he would. He's always up for these kind of things.
Good. So we need more like your husband, quite frankly.
Yeah, and then he can sign his friends up. That's how it works, right?
Yeah,
word of mouth.
Yeah, that's the idea. So it's been all right this week. I'm looking forward to the end of the week, really. Looking forward to that sort of a little bit of separation from sort of day to day, doing something a little bit different with the kids, I think. How about you, James? How's your week gone?
Yeah, I'm all right. I think things have settled down a bit, haven't I? The last couple of weeks, everything was so uncertain. It was quite sort of mentally challenging, but things seem to have settled a bit. Certainly where we are. I mean, not where Laura is, where there's basically we're now at war with Manchester or something. I don't really know how that's all padded out, but I do think perhaps because I've been. I tell you what, probably what it is. It's probably because I've been busy this week. I've been shoveling stuff because I'm off next week, trying to get stuff on the site so there's things still to go on. And so I haven't been paying quite such close attention to the news. And I think that's the best thing for your mental health, is actually to avoid too much news. I mean, you have to consume some news at the moment, so you know what you are allowed to do and what you're not. But I also think, also perhaps avoiding the news. I'm settling into, I don't know, I thought maybe you should introduce me as Jesse James this week, because I'm decided to become an outlaw, basically.
Okay.
I'm sort of more comfortable with the fact that I am now an outlaw, because the rules are so complicated that I don't know what's allowed and what's not, really. And I'm certainly not going around, I'm not going around licking anyone or stuff like that. But, I don't really, I've probably I know we broke some rules, because my son came out of school one day and said, "Oh, can my friend come round?" And we went, "Yeah." And then we were walking home and went, "Oh, actually, that's illegal, isn't it? You're not supposed to have people round to your house." I was like, but they're at school all day, so there you go. I've broken the law or something. Oh, the guidelines. But you can sort of go, well, they're at school all day. It's not the end of the world. So I think it's just, I'm sort of relaxing into the fact that I don't know all the rules, and you have to kind of have a bit of common sense. And I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong thing. Maybe I'm going to get a knock at the door once this goes out. But,
well, depends who's listening.
Yeah, well. If anybody's listening, let's face it.
Yeah, I think you can get away with quite a lot if you just kind of did it for your mental health and that side of things.
Yeah. My eyes were very sore. I needed to go and test my eyes, so I had to have somebody around for a play date. That's what it was.
We do. There's a whole range of options, I think, aren't there?
Is it tough where you are, Laura, mentally having to go back into tier 3 and all this sort of stuff that's kicking in? That must be tricky.
I mean, it's hard. It's more mentally when you watch the news, in terms of thinking about other people, to be honest, and how it's affecting other people in the area. Because for us, I feel like we've just been in the same situation since it began, if I'm honest. We're trying not to go to many places, and we've not got as much support with the kids as we would have before, and the kids are home with us more than they're in school. So it's kind of not a lot, if I'm honest, has changed. I still wouldn't take the kids around my elderly parents. I still wouldn't, do these things. So for us, a lot's changed. I think it's a bit mentally difficult when you hear the news and you hear, our mayor fighting with the Prime Minister, and they don't want to give enough money to support people. And, that's mentally hard. But actually for us personally, it's been the same since March, let's face it.
Yeah, I'm resisting talking about the politics of it, because that has made me quite angry.
Let's not.
That's for a different podcast. Let's not go.
Take the whole time up very easily.
Yeah, well, I could probably sum it up in a very short few words, but they would be words that we'd have to put explicit on the podcast. Right, let's talk about the path. That's our next our feature, sort of how you came to be doing what you're doing. Because, just tell us in the first instance, what drew you to what you do? I mean, why did you decide to go into sort of business, and particularly sort of business psychology, and how that fits with families and all that sort of thing?
Oh, well, you told me to answer this question, and I thought, I don't actually know. So I was thinking about it. You're supposed to come up with a nice, neat story, aren't you? But I don't think there is one, apart from I did psychology a long time ago as my undergraduate, and I've always just been interested in people and why they do what they do since forever. So that's obviously why I did psychology. And then I was working for a little while and just realized that everything that everyone was doing in the workplace was just annoying me, and it just didn't feel like it was. I was like, why are you doing that? That's bad management. That's not how I thought you're supposed to behave according to all the theories I've learned about. So that's how I ended up doing an organisational psychology master's. And it was during that time that I really started. I don't even know how, but I got drawn into the literature on work-family conflict and how the two interact, and also equality kind of issues. It was just reading. I just came across it. That was the literature I got stuck into, and then did my dissertation on that topic, and then did my PhD on that topic. And I guess at that time, I always researched couples. I never researched mothers or fathers alone. At that time, I mean, I've done a bit of both now separately, but at the time when I was reading, there was obviously a lot. It's quite a while ago now, so there was a lot on women's struggles with work-life balance and work-life conflict. And I was thinking about my own parents and my upbringing, and I could relate to it in that sense. So there was a lot about women. Men weren't so much in the conversation, but there was the kind of there was some statistical data, like there was time use data, so like showing men and women's time use in terms of domestic tasks and childcare tasks, just the time that they're spending. And it was always, the conclusion was always women do a lot more than men, even if they're working full time. Men's engagement is increasing a bit, but nowhere near as much. Actually, everyone's doing a bit less housework than they used to, but still women are doing more. But women are investing more in childcare than ever before. So those were the kind of statistical data. And so I always thought that, you can't really look at one without the other. It's two sides of the same coin, isn't it? And you need to, hear father's perspectives, mother's perspectives. So from the very beginning, from my PhD, I looked at couples and I got them both to keep diaries for me, recording all their daily kind of work-family conflicts and their experiences and how they resolve them, which was really fun because you got like two perspectives often of like the same thing that have happened, and it's like it was two different things. Sometimes it was, that was really good fun. Learned a lot, and obviously I interviewed them all as well. And some of the findings that came from that, from me interviewing couples and getting to know couples, kind of really cemented for me the need to focus on fathers a lot more. And I think that's where that came from. So one of my findings was that there was some couples where the men worked more flexibly than the women. They had more access to flexible working, and therefore they worked a lot more flexibly, and the women didn't have much flexibility. And in those situations, everything was a lot more equally shared. So they would both be reporting the same work-family conflicts. They'd both be involved in resolving them, and that kind of thing. Whereas when the woman had flexibility and the man didn't, so when the woman had more flexibility, it was like the man wasn't in the picture at all. So it was like loads of conflicts reported by the woman, and the man said, "Oh, no conflicts today." And she was like having a meltdown, just pages and pages of I had to take the kids and it was awful, and I was tearing my hair out, I had to pick the kids up, all of this happened, I'm in despair. And then the man was like, "No conflicts today." But that was only when the woman worked flexibly. And then that's alarm bells, because I know from other research, my own and other people's, that men don't feel like they can access flexible working easily. Flexible working, family-friendly policies aimed at women predominantly, even if that's implicitly or culturally, we know from a lot of studies that that's the case. So we're aiming policies at women, which is exacerbating inequality, on a micro level. So yeah, that's when I got really kind of a huge advocate for men. I'm really always pushing for organisations and managers to focus on men, getting men to have access and know that they're supported to do these things rather than the other way around. So more focus, don't even focus on the women so much anymore, because they already, so that's kind of where that came from.
I'll stop nodding before my head falls off, because so much of that is absolutely you're talking about there.
One of the things that, Laura, that was interesting when you were talking about how you were at the start, you said about living your research. And I wonder which bits of that in particular you're experiencing at the moment.
Well, there's a lot more work-family conflicts to deal with. They're not kind of contained at certain parts of the day. They're just all day long. Often, if the kids are at home, it's like both things going on all the time. So you're living both roles at the same time. So there's that. Also, I think because obviously you've spoke to Jasmine, that me and Jasmine and my colleague at Liverpool as well, called Jo, the three of us did this research called Parents in the Pandemic over the kind of first kind of lockdown scenario. So we got couples to keep diaries, we interviewed people. Jasmine put out a big kind of survey as well to get broader perspectives. you know, how are people managing when they're trying to do everything literally at once. So not necessarily doing one then the other, and finding it difficult to go between the two, or, you know, when there's the odd clash because like the kids are sick. This is just all the time now, so it's a different scenario. And yeah, so maybe that's why I'm living my research, I guess. Yeah.
And I'm guessing, I mean, one of the things that you've talked about before, which I think sort of feeds into that to some extent, is I'm guessing you're not a gatekeeper. I was fascinated by you've because, you know, in the book that is on my shoulder, what is it called? Authors Press 2018. It's on Amazon. In that book, we talk about maternal gatekeeping. And when I spoke to David Lammy, he was quite strong on maternal gatekeeping. But we're men, so it's not okay for us to say, women, let us in and, you know, do this. It's not. Well, I don't think it's okay.
Of course it's okay. In fact, it's essential. Like, so when I don't often genuinely see couples who share very often in all the couples that I've met. So a lot of, even if they say they share in interviews, when they keep diaries, they don't equally share. But those that do, there is a difference. There's quite a few differences, but one of them is that, like, the dads don't give up easily. You know, they're not easily deterred. They persist. They're not going, if they, you know, they might have the odd comment from their other half that, you know, about things that, oh, you don't do it like that, or that's not right, or you know, oh, sorry, there's my husband walking in the background.
Hi.
Classic lockdown move. Classic.
It is. Shoo him away. There you go.
Yeah, give him
sign up for something, Ryan. You heard.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, so they're not deterred. They persist, regardless of what happens. And so, you know, they'll say, oh, you know, thanks for the advice, love, but I'm gonna try and figure this out on my own. I want to be involved. You know, I'm gonna figure out my own routines. I'm gonna do it. You know,
I mean,
that's okay.
Good, but I'm always concerned about, if, you know, when we talk about maternal gatekeeping, I mean, presumably you're talking about, you know, there's a reason why there is maternal gatekeeping, right? Because maternity takes away a lot of agency from women, and there's a danger, isn't there? I suppose what it boils down to is how you do it, right? That's the thing. I suppose if you bowl up and say, right, I'm doing 3 months of shared parental leave now, bog off back to work, that would not be the correct approach.
Well, hopefully you'd have a more sensitive conversation than that.
Exaggerating for effect. You know, yeah, don't ever do that. That was just, you know. But yeah, I suppose how you challenge maternal gatekeeping, I suppose, is that the key?
Well, yeah, definitely. Obviously, you want to, you know, have a nice discussion about it rather than anyone pushing anybody into anything. But it's about seeing the bigger picture, I think, as well. And, you know, maternal gatekeeping, I completely understand why it happens. I still do it myself sometimes, even though I'm trying not to. But Ryan will say to me now, you're maternal gatekeeping, because he knows all the lingo. So I can't. But yeah, it's because of different parental norms for men and women, which still exist a lot. So they're very strong. I mean, norms are so strong. They have such a big impact on our behaviour. We like to think that, you know, we all just do whatever we want, but we don't. So, you know, the norms on mothers are these intensive mothering norms where the expectation is that, you know, everything, your energy, your time is completely your children, and that, you know, therefore the women are judged so much when they become mothers on literally every tiny detail. Like, there's competitive mothering, there's kind of all of this, you know, how your children look, how well they can read, how well they do this, that, the other. It all comes down to the mother. That's who's judged. Like, I know that is shifting. I know that is shifting a little bit, and it might be different for different people in different situations. And, you know, the expectations on fathers are changing. But the reason that usually mums take charge is, as what you said, James, but also that it's them who will experience the negative repercussions more so if things don't work. So they're more, that's why they're more kind of panicked about it almost. And, everything's got to be right, the detail, the management of it. They've, usually had a long period of maternity leave. So they've usually planned out all these intricate routines, that they've figured it out, how it all works and how it can all keep going. And then, they're worried about change because it's, been painstaking for them to get to that point. But at the same time, it's really damaging, because so even when like fathers and mothers are sharing more equally, there's often this woman as home manager thing that still exists, where the woman's in the background planning, and this is maternal gatekeeping, isn't it? So they're planning how and when the father will be involved in different things, and so all in there all the time, it's exhausting. So if the father's offering or trying to share some of that, then don't shoot yourself in the foot. This is really important for so many reasons. Like, it's really important for the men's well-being, because like all the research shows that when men do persist and are involved in these things, like it improves their relationship with their children. In the long run, it improves their relationship with their partner. They have better romantic lives, and all of those kind of things. And then it's better for their well-being. So men have a huge well-being issue when they're just, not able to have these kind of relationships. It's really negatively affecting men's mental health. And also for women, it's stopping this kind of dual burden, this mental exhaustion. And it's better for gender equality in society. This is the big picture. Back to the daily, maternal gatekeeping, little tiny practices, you have to undo them somehow, hopefully nicely, but I think it's important. So
wrote a book about it, basically. We cover it all. Absolutely.
Sorry,
again, I could nod an awful lot all the way through that, but you're talking about the mental load, which Ian and I have written about before.
Yeah.
Laura, I wondered how that work-family conflict, how it changes when you're talking about single parents and blended families. I know that's become more of a research issue, sort of interest for you, sort of more recently. You said you started with couples and you've sort of gravitated. I wonder how those dynamics change.
Well, obviously, there's not another person necessarily to even share anything with. I started researching just all diverse parent types quite a while ago, and then we did, I don't know if you know the Equal Lives project. It was Business in the Community funded it. I did it with Nadia from Avenir. So we did that, and we were fathers, looking at fathers, in heterosexual fathers in couples. We were looking at dads in same-sex couples. We were looking at single fathers and things like that. And that was really interesting. It showed a whole host of different things. So it showed, for example, that like men in same-sex couples were usually sharing things quite equally. You remove the whole prescribed gender roles and things become a lot more equal. There was kind of not that narrative of depriving the other person of something that was theirs. We always get with heterosexual men that, they feel like, oh, I can't, that I'm taking something that belongs to her. There was none of that in the kind of same-sex partners. And also things like line manager support seemed better. So interestingly, they, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them seem to say that the line managers has been much more supportive and flexible with them, and they had access to things, lots of policies. And some of them did kind of say they think it might be to do with political correctness and being scared about, but then also it kind of seemed like as soon as they're aware that there's no woman in the picture, because this is the thing with single dads as well. Some organisations have been awful with single dads we spoke to, but for some single dads, it was kind of the same in that as soon as the line manager knows there's not a woman in the picture, it changes. But if there's a woman in the picture, then we don't need to offer men that support. I've got a PhD student, Annika, who's looking at single parents and blended families and all of those complicated transitions. And she, I can't say too much because, you know, she's starting to write papers now, and these things will come out. But like, she did find really interestingly that the single dads, when they moved into becoming blended families, a new female partner, they didn't tell anybody at work. So they wanted to hold on to that single dad identity in the workplace, because they know, it's almost, they didn't say this, but it's almost as if they're aware, as soon as they say a woman of any kind is in the picture, that support will not be there anymore. As if, you know, as soon as there's a woman there, why would you need this? Why would you need to be involved? And yeah, so that's, yeah, it's all really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I never thought about that. That is, yeah, look forward to that. When do we get to read this? When does this research? I don't research this and stuff, but you know, that sounds really exciting.
Well, the equality stuff was published a while ago. There's a report on that. But yeah, Annika's PhD, she's nearly finished. Annika Schaefer, I'm sure she'd chat to you if you wanted. But yeah, she's starting to write papers now. There'll be loads of interesting stuff coming out. But it takes a while, you know, the academic process is slow. So
yeah. Oh yeah, nearly finished a PhD. I talked to my brother about that. He's been nearly finished a PhD for about 5 years now. But that's how it goes. I want to, I don't know if it's all right with you, and I want to move on to the tips, partly because my tip speaks to something that we've all mentioned today, and I think it's sort of an interesting point. It's interesting that we've all sort of mentioned it. My tip this week is download some podcasts. Not just this one, but ones that aren't about work and aren't about gender and just entertain you. I mean, I make some. By all means, download some of mine. You know, a podcast of his own with Julia Gillard is a cracker. That's always good. I don't know. I've been listening. I listen to quite boring ones, but you know, whatever. Everyone's got a podcast these days, right? So there's loads out there. But I've been thinking about podcasts because something you mentioned, Ian, about, you know, trying to get men to come forward. To say, you know, I need help and engage, and something, you know, you sort of touched on this, Laura, as well, that men don't sort of necessarily see themselves as the thing that I've been dealing with this week that seems to keep coming up is the whole concept of working dads. That men see they see work and they see dad, and they don't necessarily put the two together. And that, one of the things that I found from doing the Working Dads and Lockdown series on workingdads.co.uk was loads of men saying they missed the commute, right? They didn't miss sitting on a train or in a car, but they missed having time to make the mental switch from work to home and vice versa. And I just thought this really speaks to that whole issue that men don't put work and home together because they need, you know, half an hour or so to mentally transition between the two because they're so far apart in their minds. Hence my tip is, get a podcast, listen to that in your home office, and then, you know, pretend you're on the commute if that's what you need to do, you know. But yeah, I say it sort of speaks to this this idea that men don't always identify as working dads. I say they're one or the other. Is that something you found in your research, Laura?
Well, I guess so. I mean, like, interestingly, when you're talking about this commute thing and needing to be like in one or the other, in the Parents in the Pandemic project, we're still analysing the data. I'm sure Jasmine said, but there's a lot of data and it's taken a lot of time. And we have no time either because we're all parents and working. But yeah, so we're trying. But anyway, something that I find interesting in looking at the data is that there's this narrative of the mum multitaskers or the mum integrators, and it's this natural thing again. You know how we have this whole notion of natural caregiving, and it all annoys me. But now we've got the natural multitaskers or the natural integrators. Oh, mums are just better at doing both things at once. Mums are just better at, you know, not separating the two. I don't think it's true. They may be more practiced at it already because they've already had to do bits of that more frequently. And I'm pretty sure, you know, that as men get practice at it, it becomes, you know, it's a whole new routine and pattern. It takes time to. It's never going to be easy, but you find strategies, you know, to deal with it.
Come on, it's a cop-out, isn't it? It's the same reason that women get childcare dumped on them, is that for millennia, men have just gone, oh, you're naturally better at it. It's just a new version of that, going, oh, you're naturally better at handling lockdown and feeding kids and all that. Yeah, it's come on, take your responsibility. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on one. I'll try.
We got to meet people where they are, James, not where we wish them to be.
This is very true, but it's still a cop out. We can still, anyway, we're veering off tips. Laura, what would your tip be for working dads, for men in lockdown?
Oh, I have so many tips for lots of different people, but I guess we're sticking to dads though. So tip, because I mean it all interlinks, doesn't it? A tip for one person affects somebody else. But a tip for dads is kind of what I've been saying, is be brave and be vocal and like be a daredevil, because you need to say if you're being different, because we found repeatedly that men hide when they're doing the men are doing these tasks, but they're hiding it. And that doesn't make any change. It doesn't make it easier for anybody else. And I know it's always scary to put yourself out there, but be a bit of a daredevil. And really be vocal about, I'm going to get my kids now. I can't do this meeting because actually my child's here. It's COVID. He's actually, in the background, and talk about it. So don't hide it, because you're not affecting any change. And I know that's a bit scary. But then I guess it links to, can I have a tip for line managers as well? Because you kind of have to. And sometimes they're dads as well. So if you're in charge of anybody else, you should be doing that tenfold. You should be showing everything that you're doing around your family, that you've got other responsibilities, and that shouting about it, not pretending you've got a client meeting or something like that. And when men do speak up about it, when fathers do speak up about it, I mean, obviously don't say, why do you need to do that? Where's your wife? But even more so than that, much more so than that, don't just be quiet. Don't just say, okay, kind of awkwardly and then move past it. Make a big deal about it, support it enthusiastically. Say, oh, that's really important, more important than this meeting probably. This is good. Does anybody else need to go? Maybe we should rethink the time of our meetings. Make a big supportive deal of it, and that's important. And I mean, can I have the tip from mums as well? Because it's
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Because we've talked about the maternal gatekeeping a lot. And so it would be, hold your tongue a little bit. If, something's not exactly if the fathers are doing it, let them figure it out for themselves a bit. Let them, listen, it doesn't work out, then they'll realize it doesn't work out, just like you did a while ago, and then figure it out for them, for themselves, and let them have their own routines, however hard it might be. And, I still do it, like I said. So I know that it's not easy, but, but then relatedly, dads don't use that as a cop-out either. It's easy to cop out, isn't it, then, and say, oh, well, then I'm not going to bother. Yeah. But don't do that, keep going, see the bigger picture. I think everybody needs to see the bigger picture and persist, because it isn't easy to be different, is it? It's not easy to be the ones going against the norms, going against the grain. But when has any kind of social change ever happened without people doing that? They just happen.
This is what I was talking about. You can tell mums to hold their tongue. Wouldn't sound good coming from us as men, but
I'll say it. It's all right. I say it to myself. I say it to my friends. It's okay. I'll say it.
So for me, looking around outside, the leaves are changing, the trees are changing. It's a beautiful time of year, and I think if we just stop and look at those leaves, we don't live in Northeast America and Maine and that kind of thing, but I think the autumn colours are something that everyone could do to appreciate and give yourself a little lift. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for episode number 22 of Lockdown Dads. Laura, thank you very much for joining us and talking about your research and talking about fatherhood and the importance of fatherhood in inequality. We will take a couple of weeks break, and we will be back after half term. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.